be dismissed to Children's Church.
Yeah.
So we're going to be in Ruth chapter 2 this morning. So maybe last week we ended a little bit on a downer. Maybe it was a little bit of a sour note that we ended on. Naomi has left her homeland. Naomi's husband has died. Naomi's sons have died. Her sons died without having any children. She is barren. She has no form of provision coming her way. No ability to really make for herself a positive future. She returns home. She brings Ruth. Ruth chooses to come with her to Ruth's expense because Ruth's not allying herself with a winning horse. Everyone can look at Naomi and look at the arc of where Naomi's life is going, and Naomi's headed for a rough patch, a rough place. Naomi is bitter and angry and has every right to be. And none of us would even really criticize Naomi for feeling what she feels. But Ruth makes the decision, I'm going to saddle up with her anyways. And much of what we saw in that space where when Naomi returns home and she says to the people, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, call me bitterness, because life is bitter. I left full, I returned empty. And last week we talked, well, sometimes that's what life is like. And we need to be able to offer that back to God as well. We need to be able to stand before God and say, sometimes life isn't good, but blessed be your name. Sometimes life isn't good and I need your help with it and I'm deeply struggling. And there's no reason why we need to lie to God about how much we're struggling at various points in life, because God knows anyways. And so we ended last week. I think most of us have heard the story of Ruth. We have an idea that things aren't going to stay in the pit, but we ended last week in the pit. And so this week, we're going to start looking at God moving in the pit. And how God is able to begin to change the lives of these two women. So I'm going to start reading verse 1 of chapter 2. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Amalek, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor. And she said to her, go, my daughter. So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers, and she happened to come upon the part of the field that belonged to Boaz, who was of the clan of Amalek. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem, and he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. Then Boaz said to his young man who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, she is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves after the reapers. So she came, and she has continued from early morning until now, except for a short rest. So perhaps the question of the hour that we have for Ruth and Naomi is, well, how are they going to support themselves? What are they going to do about the basic needs of food, shelter, those sorts of questions? And this seems to be where where chapter 2 is concerned with answering this question. The answer is gleaning. So gleaning was a practice that was established in Deuteronomy 24 and Leviticus 19 in the Old Testament, that was available to the most vulnerable people, to the widow, to the orphan, and to the sojourner. The idea being that if you are poor and you do not have an ability to feed yourself, you are allowed to go and follow after the harvesters of another field and take what is left over. Those verses specifically instruct harvesting to not hit the bushes more than once when you're taking your olives and your grapes off of them. Don't harvest to the edge of your field. Leave a little bit left. Leave something so that that there's something there when the gleaners come behind you, that they actually have stuff that they can get at. The farmers may be encouraged to be slightly less efficient in their harvesting as what they could be. I think this is a very striking thing for us to see actually in Old Testament law. This notion that God is creating a fail-safe for women in the situation that Ruth and Naomi find themselves in. For people who are vulnerable, the widow, the orphan, the sojourner, the traveler who doesn't have the same legal rights as everyone else. God deeply cares about this group of people. And God makes a path for their provision there. We'll find in other places in Old Testament law, defrauding this group of people, taking advantage of this group of people is one of the quickest ways to get on God's bad side. Do you want to make God mad? Go ahead, take advantages of the widows and the orphans, and we know it's a quick way to earn God's wrath. So the law itself has made provision for the situation that Naomi is in. But Ruth asks permission to go out and glean. And the way that she asks it, let me go to a field and glean among the ears of grain after him, in whose sight I shall find favor. It almost suggests to me that it's possible that Ruth could go out and glean and be told to buzz off. She could show up in the field and the farmer's like, no, go somewhere else. Just because we see the law sitting in the Old Testament does not mean that that would have been what she could have expected to encounter. In fact, we almost have reason to doubt. We know that Israel, especially in the period of the Judges, this is a down spiral in Israelite ethics and morality. So the idea that they're not practicing the way God's law says really shouldn't come as a terrible surprise. And there seems to be on Ruth's part at least some question as to her ability to do this. I'll have to have the favor of whoever I go out to actually be able to do this. The reality is that for Ruth, there's danger for her to be out and about in the fields like this. For her to go to the fields unaccompanied and unprotected. We can look at modern day society and say that there are some places that it is dangerous for a woman to go alone. And it's not safe. Those sorts of vulnerabilities exist here. And I think this would be a place that Ruth would be somewhat suspect in. Her safety is not guaranteed. But when Ruth asks for Naomi's permission to do this, Ruth is taking the step forward and saying, this needs to happen. I will go out and do it. You can stay here. This is Ruth taking the risk, taking the danger, taking maybe even the humility and the status of being a poor widow who's going out and begging. And saying, I will do this, Naomi. You can stay here. You don't have to go out and do this. I can do it for you. There's a lot of love that I think we see out of Ruth and her decision to go out and do this. Verse 3. She happened to come upon the part of the field belonging to Boaz. She didn't set out for this field knowing who Boaz was. That was something that God did. God brought her to Boaz's field. Now we know from verse 1 that Boaz is a relative of Naomi's. And maybe Ruth knew that, but Ruth did not go to the field knowing she was going to a field of a relative of Naomi's. That would be something that would turn out as a pleasant God surprise for her. So she's in the field and she is working. And she attracts the attention of Boaz, who comes in. And notice how she is identified. The first identifier, she is the young Moabite woman. She's the stranger in the community. Oh, the one that came back with Naomi. You almost wonder if there isn't just a bit of disapproval in that. But she has been working hard. She's only had one short rest. Then Boaz said to Ruth, now listen, my daughter, do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Let your eyes be on the field that they are reaping, and go after them. Have I not charged the young men not to touch you? When you are thirsty, go to the vessels and drink what the young men have drawn. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your eyes, that you should take notice of me, since I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land, and came to a people that you did not know before. The Lord repay you for what you have done. A full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Then she said, I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, though I am not one of your servants. Boaz sees the situation in front of him, and he offers Ruth an awful lot here. First and foremost, he's offering her the ability to glean. Yes, please come, glean, gather for yourself what provision you need. No, you came asking for permission to do this from even the foreman. you have permission to glean. 2, you may glean exclusively from me. Do not go to any other fields. This implies that Boaz is intending to make sure that she does not need to go to another field. Now, it's not, he's not just telling her, come glean only from me, and then she walks over just this little bit, and she's like, well, I was told not to go anywhere else, but this isn't going to meet my need. No, the order of saying, come here for the provision implies that her need is going to be met. Glean with the harvesters. She's getting the best stuff. She's getting to take the harvest as it comes. This implies that there would be a part of the field, maybe, that a gleaner typically wouldn't go to. The gleaner would be only picking the stuff that had been already covered, but no, she's being told, go actually out with the main body of people harvesting and collect. She's getting prime position here. He offers her the same refreshment as his workers. You know, if you're thirsty, go get a drink with everyone else. You know, at the very least, this is time and resources he's saving her. He's letting her actually do a reasonable day's work without having to worry about, I'm thirsty, I have to go, who knows where to actually go get a drink. And he also offers her protection. You know, I have instructed the young men not to touch you. I understand that what you're doing leaves you vulnerable in the company of all of these people, you being the poor, destitute stranger. And Boaz is communicating to her, I have taken the steps to make sure that in my field you will be safe. There's been special instruction, special attention given to the fact that you are here and vulnerable, and they shall not take advantage of that. Does anyone here want to say bully for you? I mean, if this isn't godly masculinity in a very followable way for us to see, Boaz standing up for a vulnerable young woman, who is within his sphere of authority on his land. And Ruth's reaction to this, I think, shows us how notable Boaz's response is. Why are you being so nice? Boaz does not need to be this nice. Even within the framework of the law, he is being far nicer, far kinder to her than he needs to be. So in Hebrew, the word that is used to talk about this is called hesed. It's a faithful kindness. It's a really tricky word to define because it's not just being kind, it's being kind in a faithful and expected way, in a way that feels right, like what you would expect to actually transpire. And frequently, this word describes how God responds to us within his covenant. He responds to us with hesed. And that's the word that's being used here. Boaz is extending covenantal kindness and goodness to Ruth, which which is almost a reflection of what Ruth is showing to Naomi. And in fact, that's what Boaz answers to his answer of why. She's like, well, why are you being so nice? He's like, well, I may be being nicer to you than I need to be, and you have been nicer and kinder to Naomi than you needed to be. But Boaz takes a step farther here, and the ESV in verse 12 may not render this quite as clearly. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given to you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. This is Boaz pronouncing a blessing, a prayer, if you will, on Ruth. Let God bless you for the kindness that you have chosen to show towards Naomi. And when I hear him say that, the first thought that comes to my mind is Boaz is attributing the blessings that Ruth is receiving through him directly to God. Let God bless you, not Boaz. No, he's not saying, well, I, Boaz, have chosen to bless you because of the good things that you are doing. Come give me adoration as a result. No, he's saying, God will give you these blessings. He's not upstaging God's glory here. He's not taking God's credit. And when I think of Ruth, a foreigner who probably didn't know a ton about Yahweh worship, this is almost evangelical. This is almost Boaz stepping back and saying, you have united yourself now to us as a people. You've come back and he even said to Naomi, let your God be my God. Well, this is what my God is like. And it's wonderful and it's good. It's so much more powerful what Boaz is able to do here because Boaz doesn't make the decision to try to get credit for the provision that he's making. And at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here and eat some bread and dip your morsel in the wine. So she sat beside the reapers, and he passed to her roasted grain, and she ate until she was satisfied. And she had some left over. And when she rose to glean, Boaz instructed his young men, saying, let her glean even among the sheaves, and do not reproach her. Also, pull out some from the bundles for her and leave it for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. So we see Boaz's goodness continues, and he offers to her a meal. And this is more than just food. I mean, the food I'm sure was pleasant, but he's inviting her to the table with the workers. Come sit down with us while we eat. To a foreigner? To a woman who knows absolutely nobody in the area. This is an invitation of community. Come sit down with us, eat with us, and join in the conversation. Become a part of the group. Become a part of the fold. Oftentimes, and I think when we think of the most vulnerable people in society, aren't they usually separated communally as well? There's a community break that's there. I think this is rather perceptive on Boaz's part here. because he's interested in not just meeting her physical provision need, but by trying to draw her into the community that he is a part of. This speaks to more needs than just food that she has. And he gives instructions to his workers to make it even easier for her to be productive. Let her glean from even what you've taken, and take a little out and leave a little extra on the ground for her. Why do you suppose he does that rather than just gives her a group of grain? Because that's effectively what he's doing, right? Right, at this stage is he's giving her the grain. But the way in which he's doing it, it's preserving Esther's ability to work. It's preserving her work ethic. I think it preserves her pride. By not making it a gift, it also removes an obligation of reciprocity. How many of you, when you receive a gift, feel compelled to give something back to the person? Yeah. There's no question of this going with how Boaz is doing it. He's not giving her anything that's going to make her feel indebted to him. Again, it's almost as though in the way Boaz is doing it, he's intentionally collecting as little glory as possible. He's not even creating a situation where he gives her the grain and she has to come back to him and say thank you. There's nothing wrong with appreciating a thank you for the good things that you do. But do we sometimes work too hard for it? Do we sometimes do kind and wonderful things to other people with the purpose of getting back gratitude and self-affirmation? And that is our motivation behind it. Okay, so let's stop and take score here of what Boaz has done. He's allowed her to glean. He's made the gleaning productive. He's kept her safe, given her protection, given her stability. He's extended community to her. All while making sure God gets the most credit that he can possibly give, and that he takes as little attention away from God as he can. In verse 12, we see Boaz pray over Ruth that her needs be met. He says, a full reward given to you by the Lord. What would be a full reward for Ruth and her situation? Children. The perspective of a future. Boaz prays this prayer, and then he lets God use him to answer the prayer. I don't want to dog on the importance of prayer or make prayer feel like it's not an important thing. But I wonder sometimes if we are called to do more than just pray. If we are called to let God let us be a part of answering that prayer. See, Boaz could say, oh, please pray for her provision. And then he could have walked away. And he gave a nice prayer. But rather, Boaz actually did something about the need that was in front of him. And God had given him the ability to answer this. I remember hearing a story about a man who had become disenchanted with the Christian faith. And he was out, and someone asked him, well, why? And he's like, well, every day I walked past this beggar outside of this church. And every day I walked past the beggar. And I thought, why does no one from that church help him? Why doesn't anybody stop and intercede on his path? And he's like, I walked past that man, every day for 5 years. And the person he was speaking to asks him, well, why didn't you? There's a value of action that we see out of Boaz here, and sometimes as Christians we can be tempted to hide behind prayer. And it's not necessarily saying that we have to do exactly what Boaz did, because there are many needs that we can meet, whether it's physical provision, housing, food, but it also might be providing safety or community. Boaz identifies the need, he prays for it, and then he lets God use him to meet it. What need is God calling you to meet today? I think when we take a further look at Boaz, we see that Boaz's life is transformed. Now, I'm going to read Leviticus 19 here, verses 9 and 10. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap your field right up to its edge, neither shall you gather the gleanings after your harvest, and you shall not strip your vineyards bare, neither shall you gather the fallen grapes of your vineyards. You shall leave them for the poor and for the sojourner. I am the Lord your God. I think that particular bit of scripture transformed Boaz's life. I think when Boaz read that command, he let that speak to his soul. And he came to the conclusion that I am supposed to be meeting the needs of the vulnerable around me. As much as I would want to tell everyone in this room to be like Boaz, to see the needs of people and take initiative, if your life's not transformed by the word, this is going to be an uphill battle. And by and large, it will be an empty challenge on my part. So she gleaned in the field until evening, and she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. And she took it up and went to the city, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. And she also brought out and gave her what food she had left over from being satisfied. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? And where have you worked? Blessed be the man who took notice of you." And so she told her mother-in-law with whom she had worked and said, "The man's name with whom I worked with today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "May he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Now Naomi also said to her, "The man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers." And Ruth the Moabite said, "Besides, he said to me, 'You shall keep close by my young women until they have finished all my harvest.'" And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It is good, my daughter, that you go with his young women, lest in another field you be assaulted." So she kept close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests, and she lived with her mother-in-law. So Ruth returns with an ephod of grain, which translates to about 22 liters. That's a goodly amount. It's usually, at the point in time, a standard military ration would have been 1 liter for an individual. So 22 liters for a 2-woman household. This is a week and a half's worth of grain off of 1 day's work. Not bad in an economy where many workers work for their next day's sustenance. And she works for the entire harvest. Grain harvest in Israel is about 7 weeks long. You can do the math. This is about 63 weeks worth of provision that she would have picked up for her and Naomi. That's basically the year's worth of food. And when Ruth comes back and Naomi sees Ruth, Naomi's first response is, wow. Somebody took notice of you. This is far better than what this usually looks like. And it's the first time that we see in this entire story a blessing come out of Naomi's mouth. The kindness of what has been done actually affects Naomi's spirit. That makes me feel good. Because when I'm in that place of emptiness and bitterness, it sometimes takes an awful lot to move me out of it. Where you're mad and you're going to stay cross your arms and you just settle into it. And then Ruth tells Naomi the story of what has transpired, and Naomi's like, She's starting to put the pieces together, and I think for the first time in a great long while for Naomi, she's actually beginning to see in front of her a future evolving. A future that actually could add up. Yeah, Ruth, why don't you keep going to his field? It's worked out for you real well, and make sure that you stay safe. He's taking good care of you. I think we could end the book of Ruth right here, and most of us, I think, would be reasonably satisfied, wouldn't we? We would have a story about a woman who had hard times, and a miraculous story about God bringing her family to the notice of someone who was kind and gracious and merciful to their family, who met their needs in a way that they could have never imagined, and as a result, the family doesn't starve. The end. That's a reasonable story, isn't it? But the last sentence in verse 23 really clues us into the fact that there's more story to tell, and she lived with her mother-in-law. Yes, chapter 2 ends with our question being answered with how will the family take care of themselves? This has been answered. They are provided for. But their situation has not changed. It is still 2 widow women living together. Still vulnerable, still empty, still barren, but not hungry anymore. This gives us an even greater expectation of, okay, what more will God do? I think sometimes in our own lives we can have these large-scale issues, these large-scale problems that come up. and we see God making progress in them, and we see good things happen, and we are rightly excited and happy for them. And I wonder if God even has more for us in those spaces, if the story isn't quite over. And sometimes we sell God's goodness short because we think God has answered the problem when really there's even more behind. There's even more coming. Because God has intention to do so much more for Naomi other than just merely provide for her existence in the pit. God's intention is to completely and utterly change her reality. And I think that's what God desires for us too. God does not merely wish to come with us and comfort us in the pit and make life tolerable again. God wishes to transform life and make it vibrant and make us do crazy things like what Boaz does when he hears you should be kind to the poor. That's what God's desire is for each of us, is to make us a transformed people. Couple of takeaways that we can see from Ruth chapter 2, which I think is significantly more encouraging than Ruth chapter 1 was. Ruth and Naomi are vulnerable women, and caring for the vulnerable is close to the heart of God. Boaz is kinder to Ruth than he would have to be, mirroring Ruth's kindness to Naomi. We need to be willing to be used by God to meet the needs of others. We can be called to meet the physical needs or community needs. Yes, it is good to pray, but let us not use that as an excuse not to act and do more. When we provide for others, we should strive to show people God's grace and provision rather than be concerned with glory and receiving credit. And God can use the things that we do to ultimately